Hollywood didn't just whisper this time, it exploded. One cold sentence, one radio confession, and suddenly the illusion shattered. Brad Pitt wasn't amused, wasn't flattered, and definitely wasn't playing along. And Meghan Markle's most aggressive Hollywood comeback fantasy went up in flames.
Yeah, Meghan Markle. I remember her cornering me on the set of Horrible Bosses with Jen. She talked non-stop about herself. Thought she was pitching to join a project at first, but nah, it got weird fast. So we made an excuse and split.
Brad Pitt has just dropped a bombshell. Not the playful kind, not the vague kind, but the kind that detonates careers. The kind that makes publicists sweat, phones buzz, and reputations crack. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle. Again. It started like all Hollywood disasters do, with a smile that lingered too long, a conversation that wouldn't end, and an ambition that didn't know when to stop. Brad Pitt, casually recounting a moment from years ago, finally said out loud what insiders have whispered behind champagne flutes for over a decade. She cornered him. She talked about herself nonstop. And it got weird. Fast. That wasn't flirtation. That wasn't networking. That was the first red flag in a saga that's been quietly fermenting since Meghan was still hustling for Blink and You Miss It roles, and dreaming of standing where Jennifer Aniston already ruled. Because make no mistake, this story didn't start in Venice. It didn't even start with Brad Pitt. It started with envy. Back in 2011, on the set of Horrible Bosses, Meghan Markle wasn't just another background name on the call sheet. She was watching, measuring, comparing. And according to people who were there, she said something that would haunt her for years to come. When it comes to acting, me and Jennifer Aniston, we're the same. The audacity stunned the crew. Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart, box office royalty, versus Meghan Markle, whose entire presence in the film amounted to roughly 30 seconds of screen time. 30 seconds. A cameo so brief it evaporated before audiences even noticed her name. And that humiliation? It burned. Behind the scenes, Meghan allegedly spiraled. The script was suddenly bad. The production was suddenly a mess. The experience was suddenly beneath her. But here's the twist. She didn't burn the bridge with Aniston publicly. No, she pivoted. She recalculated. Because Jennifer Aniston wasn't just an actress. She was a gatekeeper. Fast forward a decade, and Meghan had traded Hollywood rejection for royal elevation. Titles, headlines, global attention. But when the palace doors slammed shut in 2020, something terrifying happened. The spotlight dimmed, Montecito became the new stage, and Meghan needed Hollywood again, badly. So she did what she always did when momentum slipped. She reached upward, and this time, the invitation was personal. Jennifer Aniston, come over, casual hang, no pressure, except it wasn't casual, and everyone knew it. Sources say Meghan saw that invitation as her golden ticket back into the elite circle, a visual reset. Duchess meets America's sweetheart, validation by proximity. But Jennifer Aniston didn't bite. She declined, polite, distant, final, and that rejection reopened an old wound. Because whispers had followed Meghan for years, whispers Aniston had reportedly heard long before Montecito. Whispers that Meghan had openly talked about wanting Brad Pitt one day. Girlfriend, wife, anything. This wasn't a crush. This was strategy. Brad Pitt was the ultimate Hollywood crown. And Meghan, insiders say, had no problem aiming for the throne even while he was married, even while he was breaking Jennifer Aniston's heart. Even while Angelina Jolie entered the picture and detonated Hollywood's most infamous love triangle, Aniston remembered. And she didn't forget. So when Meghan came knocking years later, wrapped in royal branding and Hollywood hunger, the answer was already written. No. But Meghan didn't retreat. She redirected. Because Brad Pitt was back in the spotlight, happier, calmer, fiercely private, and this time he had someone new by his side. Inés de Ramón, effortless, unbothered, untouchable. Enter Venice. The Venice Film Festival isn't just glamour, it's power. Deals whispered on gondolas, careers reborn over candlelight dinners. And Meghan allegedly saw her opening. A double date, one photograph, one carefully leaked encounter, one reclaiming of relevance. Sources claim her team worked the angles quietly, floating the idea of a chance meeting. Something organic, something spontaneous, something that would scream, she's back. But Brad Pitt wasn't fooled. Because when he heard her name, memory kicked in. The cornering, the self-obsession, the discomfort, the feeling that every interaction was a stepping stone for her brand. And he was done. His radio confession wasn't accidental. It wasn't nostalgic. It was a warning shot. I thought she wanted a role, he implied. Nope, got weird fast. In Hollywood, that's code. Do not engage. Critics say this was Brad Pitt protecting more than his relationship. He was protecting his peace, his brand, his boundaries, and maybe, just maybe, Jennifer Aniston too. Because this wasn't just about flirting. It was about rewriting narratives, about proximity fame, about someone who, insiders argue, has always believed she deserved A-list status without the A-list work. And Venice? Venice was supposed to be her resurrection, but Brad Pitt had other plans. Behind closed doors, sources say he shut it down. No shared dinners, no overlapping schedules, no convenient coincidences. The message was firm and unmistakable. Not interested, not happening, not now, not ever. And just like that, Meghan's most ambitious Hollywood maneuver collapsed before it could even be photographed. What looked like coincidence to the public felt like exile behind the scenes. And the fallout? Oh, it was brutal. Because when the elite quietly close ranks, there's no press release. There's just silence. And silence in Hollywood is louder than scandal. By the time the festival lights dimmed, Brad Pitt and Nina Ramone walked away untouched, glowing, united, unbothered. And Meghan? Left watching from the sidelines, again. By the time the Venetian night air cooled and the flashbulbs stopped popping, the damage was already done. No confrontation, no screaming headlines at first, just something far worse in Hollywood. Exclusion. The kind you don't recover from with a smile or a press release. Because here's the truth no one says out loud. When Brad Pitt quietly says no, the room listens. And Meghan felt it immediately. Sources whisper that once Pitt drew his line, doors didn't slam, they simply never opened. Invitations vanished. Schedules filled up. Conversations ended mid-sentence. The Venice Film Festival, once imagined as her triumphant re-entry into elite Hollywood, turned into a glossy reminder of how alone she really was in that space. This wasn't just rejection, it was exposure. Behind the scenes, insiders say the narrative snapped into focus. Not the carefully curated Duchess brand, but the pattern. The relentless climbing. The strategic attachments. The belief that proximity equals prestige. Hollywood tolerates ambition, it punishes desperation, and Meghan's desperation, critics argue, had been brewing for years. After leaving royal life, the plan was clear: Hollywood would bend, deals would roll in, prestige would follow. But reality hit harder than expected. Projects stalled, Spotify fizzled, appearances felt forced, and the star power she expected to command never fully materialized. So she reached higher. Again. Brad Pitt wasn't just a name, he was symbolic, an ultimate stamp of approval. One image beside him could have rewritten her post-royal narrative overnight. That's why Venice mattered. That's why the double date mattered. And that's why Brad's rejection stung so deeply. Because it wasn't dramatic, it was dismissive. He didn't yell, one insider claims. He didn't argue. He simply removed himself. That's Hollywood's most lethal move. As whispers spread through festival corridors, people started connecting dots they'd ignored for years. The old horrible bosses comments, the Jennifer comparisons, the alleged fixation on Pitt long before Meghan ever met Harry. The way every relationship seemed to elevate her visibility until it didn't. Critics began asking the uncomfortable question, was this really about acting? Or about access? Jennifer Aniston's role in the saga loomed larger than ever. Her quiet refusal to engage, no clapbacks, no interviews, suddenly looked like foresight. She'd seen this energy before. The measuring. The ambition that doesn't pause to read the room. And when Pitt publicly echoed discomfort, that sealed it. Hollywood doesn't protect feelings, it protects itself. The fallout rippled outward. Casting agents grew cautious. Producers hesitated, not because of scandal, but because of risk. Meghan had become unpredictable in the worst way. Someone who brought more narrative than talent to the table. She comes with baggage, one unnamed executive allegedly muttered. And it's not the kind that sells tickets. Even worse? The perception that she'd weaponized association, that any interaction could be reframed, repurposed, or leveraged for her brand. In an industry obsessed with control, that's unforgivable. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt didn't flinch. He stayed wrapped in calm, focused on his work, protective of his partner, uninterested in reliving past chaos. His message, intentional or not, was devastatingly clear. I've already survived one Hollywood war. I'm not volunteering for another. And Meghan? She was left with silence. No photos, no stories in her favor, no accidental crossover moments, just absence. And absence is loud. The internet, of course, did what it always does. theories exploded. Some defended her, framing her as misunderstood. Others sharpened their knives, calling it karma. But inside the industry, where opinions actually matter, the verdict was colder. She'd overplayed her hand. Again. Because here's the brutal irony. Meghan didn't need Brad Pitt to succeed. She needed patience, craft, humility. But those don't trend, they don't headline, and they don't feed the kind of urgency that had been driving her moves since before royalty ever entered the picture. Hollywood remembers everything, every comment, every comparison, every whispered boast. And when Brad Pitt casually reminded the world that she once cornered him, talked endlessly about herself and made him uncomfortable, that wasn't gossip, that was confirmation. From that moment on, the narrative shifted. Meghan wasn't the wronged outsider anymore. She was the disruptor people quietly avoided. As Venice faded into memory, insiders say her team scrambled, reframing appearances, softening messaging, pivoting toward philanthropy again. But the damage lingered, because once Hollywood decides you're more trouble than value, no title can save you, not even a duchess. This wasn't a public takedown. It was a professional erasure. And Brad Pitt? He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to accuse. He simply refused to participate. In this town, that's power. So where does that leave Meghan? At a crossroads she's faced before, only this time without novelty on her side. The world already knows her story. The intrigue has faded. The mystique has thinned. And the industry she once believed owed her something is quietly reminding her of an unforgiving truth. Hollywood doesn't reward who you are. It rewards what you deliver. And unless something changes, unless the hunger for relevance stops dictating the moves, this won't be the last closed door. It'll just be the loudest. Because Brad Pitt didn't just end a Venice fantasy. He exposed the gap between ambition and reality. And in Hollywood, once that gap is visible, it never fully closes.